So last year I decided to make not a New Year's resolution per se, but I wanted to start reading. I wanted to read more. I got library cards and I read more. I set the goal of 20 books and I actually surpassed that, which I'm very happy about. The reason why most of the books that I read are not physically here is because, like I said, I got most of them from the library. This also helped in that if I got out a book, I started it and I didn't like it or I didn't want to finish it, I didn't have the kind of pressure like, oh, I spent money on this and I could just return it. And that happened a lot. I put together a reading log, which I'll probably throw up on the screen. I will just be kind of going over my year 2024 in books. So I started the year with The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. I read it in a few days. I got it from the library. I think it's a 4 out of 5. It's a combination of fantasy, history, spanning over many years and kind of places, but it does have like a modern day and then going into the fantasy, which I quite like. I really enjoyed the book. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. You'll see a lot of 4 out of 5 stars. I don't know why I kind of default to that a lot for a lot of these books. I would definitely recommend this book. And I believe Erin Morgenstern also wrote another book that people like, but I cannot remember what it's called right now. I think it's called The Night Circus. I have not read that though. The second book I read is The Whale: A Love Story by Mark Beauregard. I read that in early February. Also got it from the library. Again, 4 out of 5 stars. This is about the author of Moby Dick, previous to / while he writes Moby Dick, and this kind of a love story, unrequited love that he has for a friend of his. And it is loosely based obviously on history, and it's an interesting book. I liked it. I like a historical drama. This is a historical fiction book, I think would be what we would describe it as. I then got a bunch of books from the library that I did not finish reading. I gave up very early on for various reasons. The next book I properly read was The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin and The World We Make, which is a duology that I read between the end of February and the beginning of March. And I got them both from the library. I rated the first book 4.5 out of 5 and the second book 4 out of 5. I don't specifically remember why I made that distinction, but it is again, a very interesting book. It is set in modern day, but it has fantasy kind of elements. It's about people who become the manifestations or the representatives or avatars of cities, but it's New York, so they become a representation of the different boroughs. I got this one because Reads with Rachel recommended it, and a person whose opinion I respect in terms of books, so I decided to read both of them, and they're very good. The characters are compelling. This was a hard one to categorize genre-wise. It has eldritch, it's also modern, but it's like supernatural in a not the way you would normally think of. Then I read The Sea Elephants by Shastri Akella. I did not actually finish this one, but I got most of the way through. I just got to the point where I felt kind of uncomfortable with reading, and it was also just kind of boring at a certain point. I felt kind of bad about that. I ended up rating it 3 out of 5 though in the end, because it was, I think, well written for the most part. Then I read Where the Dead Wait by Ali Wilkes. This is the first one that I actually bought because it was so new that there wasn't any in the libraries yet. Rated 4 out of 5. I read between March and early April. It was really good. This is a Arctic kind of supernatural gothic horror story. I'm a fan of the show The Terror, which is what brought me to it. It's about like an Arctic explorer who kind of has to go back after his first kind of failed mission for various things, and it's kind of about him and the relationship between him and these other people, and it goes between these two timelines, the first mission and then the second mission. And it was good. I was definitely compelled. Again, 4 out of 5. I thought it was really interesting and well written, and sufficiently kind of spooky with that gothic horror kind of theme. The first book that I actually have on me is The Emperor and the Endless Palace by Justinian Huang, which I read in April. I got 3.5 out of 5. This was bought from an independent bookstore in San Francisco. I thought it was really interesting. It goes between different time periods, and it is about kind of reincarnation and soulmates and that sort of thing. And I thought the way they did that was really interesting. There was some stuff I think that could have been developed more, because you are split between so many different timelines. There's some things that it's a little confusing or like not, I think, built the best in the best way possible. But I still really liked it, and I still recommend it. I then read Greenland by David Santos Donaldson, which I also rated 3.5 out of 5 stars, and also read in April. It is about an author who's writing about the like lover of E.M. Forster, and so it kind of goes between like the book that he's writing about this kind of historical person who's sort of been forgotten, called Muhammad al-Adil, and his own like current day story and experiences as a Black British person, and also as like a writer, and then him coming to America for school and like his different life experiences. So it's kind of split between the two things. I thought it was interesting, and it was well written. The cover really does not tell you what the book is going to be about. I also have like interest in E.M. Forster. Maurice is one of my favorite books, so that is what initially drew me to the book. It was pretty good. I think there were certain elements where I was like, I genuinely don't remember, but obviously like I didn't think it was perfect, but I thought it was very good. The next book I read was The Kaiju Preservation Society by John Scalzi, which I read end of April, early May. I rated 3 out of 5 stars. This was sci-fi. It's about a guy who gets recruited to this Kaiju Preservation Society where they like go to this other kaiju world. I like kaijus. I'm a fan of Pacific Rim. I think my main complaint was like, oh, they could have done more with this concept, even though they still did a decent amount, and I think it was still pretty good. And I still have to read John Scalzi's other book, Red Shirts, which I've been told is good. And then I read All the World Besides by Gerard Conley, which is 3.5 out of 5, got it from the library. Also got Kaiju Preservation Society from the library. And I think that it was All the World Besides. It was good. It was a historical book about leader of a town in kind of early American, like New England 1600s, I believe, time, and then his family and him having like a forbidden romance with this other guy. But then I just remember it was very bleak, which I kind of knew going in. I just remember like it wasn't very fun to read, and some of the characters were a bit frustrating, which like makes sense for the time period and stuff. But I think it is, again, still good. I then read The House with Doors, which, nope, I don't have that, because I got it from the library, which I read in July, 3.5 out of 5. It was, again, a historical book set between kind of two time periods, and it was told from the perspective of this author's wife, both the end of her life, and then reflecting back on this time, another author like stayed with them in their home. I will put up the plot summary. Like I said, my memory is really bad, but I remember like enjoying it. Like it was interesting. Like I believe, I don't know, like there was stuff with like connections to historical people, and I don't recall if that was like actually, like there is stuff based on real history there. I think it was an interesting perspective because it was like mostly like the people and the characters that the author chose to focus on was like an interesting choice. But it still was like a good read. I then read Adventuring Zone: The Suffering Game, which is a graphic novel. It was a gift for Christmas last year. I read it in one day in July, 4 to 5 stars. It's based on the Adventure Zone, a D&D podcast, which is one of my favorites, and this is one of the last things, so it's when it's getting a bit more serious in this arc. I think there should be only one more, and then the graphic novels will have covered all of the original campaign. I then, oh god, there's so many of these. I'm going to just start going through. I read The Kingdoms by Natasha Pulley. It was 4 to 5 stars, got it from the library. I was promised that it would be more like Black Sails. It was not piratey enough for me, but I still liked it. 4 to 5 stars, like I said, because it's historical, it has time travel stuff. I liked that. And then I read A Tip for the Hangman by Alison Epstein, 4 to 5 stars, library. It was based on the history of Kit Marlowe, but like very kind of fictionalized and not completely based on history. I like Kit Marlowe. I like that kind of era, Shakespeare kind of stuff. So that was what interested me for a lot. It also focused a lot on his spy work stuff, and that was interesting. Although obviously, like I said, mostly fictitious and not based on true fact. Then I read An Evening with Bertie O'Day by Greg Kearney. 3 out of 5 stars from the library. I read it in August. I had it at 4 before, but I think on reflection it was like 3, just because like the main character of Bertie O'Day was very annoying. But like that's kind of the point. I thought it was interesting. It was about it's a Canadian author, so but not where I live. It's from Alberta, I believe, like small town, and it's about this man reflecting back on his childhood and like growing adolescence with this person who ended up growing Birdie O'Day, and he ended up becoming like this famous pop star, but he knew him before, you know, that kind of thing. I then read Savage Season by Joe R. Lansdale, which I got from the library. This is the first book in the Hap and Leonard series. Now, I've watched the show Hap and Leonard before I read the books. I really like this show with Michael K. Williams as Leonard and British Man as Hap, it's about two friends, Hap and Leonard, getting involved in like Swamplands, Texas in the 80s. And I think it's a really good show. The first book especially is very similar to the show. And I rated it 3.5 out of 5 stars. Then I read The Vampire Lestat and Rice. I started reading this book literal years ago. I do not know when, but I finally finished it in August. 3 out of 5 stars. It is something I bought, like I said, years ago. I read it because the second season I just finished watching Interview with the Vampire Show, and I know the third season is going to be based on this book, or heavily inspired by this book, so I was like, well, I gotta know what the actual source material is. No clue what they're gonna do with it. The lore goes off the rails so quickly. And then read On Swift Horses by Shannon Fowle. Read that end of August, and 5 out of 5 stars from the library. Literally, it's a historical thing. It's like set in the 50s, I believe, set between a woman's perspective as she starts betting on horses, and then her husband's brother, who's like off doing stuff in Vegas and whatnot. I read it because it's being turned into a movie and I wanted to read it. I then read a short story or novella called Enter the Aardvark by Jessica Anthony, 2.5 out of 5 stars. I did not like this. It was kind of weird. It was set between different stories with this aardvark and like eyes, and there was a politician at one point. I really don't remember this book. It was kind of odd, but like fine. It wasn't too bad. I then read Mucho Mojo, this is Joe R. Lansdale, again in the Hap and Leonard series. I bought it secondhand from a secondhand bookstore, as well as the third book, which I have started but not finished yet. I thought it was pretty good, 3 out of 5 stars. This is where it diverges from the show, and I'm like, oh, I like the show more, so that kind of throws me off a bit, but that's on me. I then read Solomon's Crown by Natasha Siegel from the library, 4 out of 5 stars. It's about King Philip of France, and then the prince from England, and their relationship during the time where like it's the three brothers, and then there's the wars and all that stuff, and the king with his mother who's like locked away. I can't remember anyone's names, but it was a good read. Not completely historically accurate at all, but that was established, so I could put that away. I then read Mr. Loverband by Bernadette Evaristo, 5 out of 5 stars. One of my only 5 out of 5 stars I got from the library. It is about an older man living in England who's from Antigua originally, and he's kind of in his 70s, 80s, like very old, married, but he had like an affair essentially with his best friend, who's a guy, for many, many, many years, and it's kind of about them and then his family and like the fallout of all of that. And literally right after I read the book, I saw that there was a trailer for a TV show, and I watched the TV show, and the TV show is really good. So I would recommend both reading the book and watching the show. I then read Herc by Phoenicia Rogerson in November into December, for 4.5 out of 5 stars. Got it from the library. Very good book about Hercules, but from like every other person's perspective, and I thought that was just really an interesting way to tell the story. It also helped me understand the myth of it better. Obviously, probably wasn't completely accurate, but you know, it still is interesting to read. I've then started some books, Scattered Like Seeds by Shah J. Dalal. I have not finished it. I got it from the Little Public Library. Then started Two Bear Mambo, which is the third book in the Hap and Leonard series. Also haven't finished it, and that's again bought used. I started Voyage of the Damned by Frances White. I'm about just past halfway through. I like it. I don't love it. It's not what I thought it was going to be. The writing style is a bit too modern, I think, for like this fantasy kind of world. It's kind of hard to get super invested because the main character is like very like, oh, you know, sarcastic, that kind of thing. I'm like, it has to be done really well in order for it to work, and I don't know if it 100% works, even though I find the story and setting interesting. It's not as good as I hoped it would be, especially with like, look how beautiful this cover is. Straight edges, and then this is bought. This was one of the few books that I bought because I was like, this is so pretty, and I wanted to support the author because of that whole thing that happened last year, you know. But I have not finished it yet. I then, on Christmas Eve, I read A Christmas Carol, which I have in this book, which is very short, which is just Owned. It's my grandma's. She gave it to me last year. 5 out of 5 Little Christmas Carol. It's just a good, solid little book, little story to cap off the year. But now I will do my very, very best to finish Voyage of the Damned. I also finally have Heavenly Tyrant, the sequel to Iron Widow. I got it on Christmas because it was supposed to be a gift for me 2 years ago, but it finally came this year because it was finally published, and I'm very excited to read that. This year in books specifically has been, I'm happy that I've read more books than I thought I was going to. That's not ideal. I've hoped to read 25 books is my goal for next year. Stay safe out there. Have a good Happy New Year shit. Okay. What books did you read this year?
The book of love is long and boring. No one can lift the damn thing. It's full of charts and facts and figures and instructions for dancing.